This is a Film Stories original podcast.
This is Writers on Film, the only podcast dedicated to books on cinema. Hi everybody, my name's John Bleasdale. I'm a writer and film critic, and I'm doing one of these introductions. I haven't done one for a long time, partly because I've got a couple of things I'd like to say which are not to do with the podcast and today's episode per se, but also because I didn't feel that I really introduced my guests very well. So first of all, let me just give a little bit of housekeeping news. The podcast is going really, really well. We're getting lots of listeners, lots of downloads, and I'm very pleased about that. I've got loads of exciting guests coming up in the autumn. I've also been, as you might have seen from my social media, if you follow me on Blue Sky, or if we're friends on Facebook, or you follow my Instagram, Dr. John T, DRJONTY, then you might have seen that I've published a book called Darkness Visible, The Cinema of Jonathan Glazer. Please buy a copy if you want to, but please buy a copy even if you don't. It really helps out. Other news is that we have been listed in the top 100 of millionpodcasts.com, their film history podcasts list. So that's a little bit of recognition. It'd be great if any of you have if you review podcasts or you do anything in the media that you, if you share this on your social media or anything, any kind of promotion would be greatly received. But that's great from millionpodcasts.com. Which is, it's really good to have some sort of recognition out there, and hopefully get more listeners, and get more people reading these books and enjoying these wonderful books. Speaking of which, today's episode features superb guests. The book is called Making Monsters, Inside Stories from the Creators of Hollywood's Most Iconic Creatures, and is a follow-up to Masters of Makeup Effects, A Century of Practical Magic. These books are co-authored by Howard Berger and Marshall Julius. Howard is an award-winning prosthetic makeup artist. His credits hark back to Giorgio Romero's Day of the Dead and include the Walking Dead, Chronicles of Narnia, Scream, Sam Raimi movies. Just tons of his filmography is massive. Nominated for Hitchcock for the Academy Award. Won an Oscar for the Chronicles of Narnia, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. Absolutely, a sterling expert, and someone who puts pen to paper with Marshall Julius. Marshall himself, a writer, author of Vintage Geek, and a self-confessed veteran nerd. So these are two high-caliber guests. Wonderful to have them on the show, and I just wanted to give them a little bit of a better introduction than I gave them when I was doing it live. So there'll be a little bit of repetition at the very beginning of the episode, but I'm sure you prefer that to me not giving them their due. Please remember, if you can, to spread the word about the podcast. Let everybody know about it, and I hope you enjoy the conversation. Hello everybody and welcome to Writers on Film. My name is John Bleasdale. I am a writer and film critic, and today I am delighted to be joined by Howard Berger and Marshall Julius, two authors. Marshall is a writer and entertainment journalist. Howard is a makeup
specialist genius, I think we have every right to say, and who have written a new book, Making Monsters, about the definitive art of creating makeup effects and monsters in all their glory, an encyclopedic book, if you like, containing testimonies from some of the leading names in the industry. Thanks for joining me, guys.
Sure. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having us on.
Yeah, thank you.
So first of all, the question I really wanted to ask at the very beginning, or the sort of thing that surprised me when I first started reading your book, was how my own definition of monsters was actually quite narrow. And reading some of the people at the very beginning of your book, they start by saying, oh, yeah, there's Moby Dick, and there's, of course, Ray Harryhausen goes back to the Greeks and the Minotaur and various other monsters. And so I suddenly started thinking, oh, my God, yeah, monsters are everywhere.
They are. Well, listen, I mean, I think everybody in the world loves monsters, and that's one of the things. I mean, that's why we talk to so many different people in this book. I mean, our first book, Masters of Makeup Effects, was specifically about makeup effects, and it was, probably 95% heavy as far as our contributors and the people we interviewed were all makeup effects people. But this is a wider net. So, we have writers and visual effects artists and, actors and directors and, everything, and some makeup effects folk. But, it all starts with like reading, books. I mean, it all comes from, we all read Mary Shelley's Frankenstein when we were kids, or Bram Stoker's Dracula, and that, spawned the beginnings of it, or even farther back, I think I was interested in reading the Odyssey only because there was a Cyclops in it, but it's where it's through history, it's through everything. I mean, we have monsters from, the past, and we have monsters today, be it, fictional or, what have you, or nonfiction. But, everybody loves it. And we're always surprised who loves monsters. And I mean, Marshall and I, in talking to people, you're always surprised how many people are like, oh, I grew up loving monsters. It could be anybody. One story that I found really interesting. I was doing a film called The Green Mile, and I was talking to Tom Hanks in the trailer, and Tom was talking about he loves Jason and the Argonauts. That was like his favorite film. And so one of his greatest things in life was being able to hand over Ray Harryhausen's honorary Governor's Award, Academy Award, to him because he was so enamored with Ray Harryhausen. And we all were. That's where it all starts. I think all of us wanted to be stop motion animators until we realized, hey, wait a minute, what's this other thing that they did? I mean, I love stop motion, and I'm always thrilled about it. But, it wasn't until I saw like, Rick Baker, or Dick Smith and Stan Winston. And I was like, oh, wait a minute. No, I want to be a makeup effects guy. But monsters are through everything. It's a common thread. And that's why it's always so funny to me when Hollywood refuses to call a film a horror movie, like Silence of the Lambs. That's a horror movie. It's not it's a psychological thriller, but it's a horror movie. Or I always thought it was funny when that movie Wolf came out, the Mike Nichols film with Jack Nicholson, and they're like, thriller. I'm like, a guy turns into a werewolf. All right. There's actually a couple people that turn into a werewolf. That's a horror movie, man. That ain't like a thriller on any level. So, but now, I mean, it seems to be those are the movies that always do well, and horror movies always do well. Even if they're crap, which a lot of them are, they always do really well. So, people love to be scared. People love to, sit in a theater or read a book or, whatever that frightens them. I mean, that's why Stephen King is so hugely popular. I mean, if you read his books and you're genuinely creeped out as you're reading the words. So
I think it's the appeal of the other, I just think that, it's like how different from real life can fiction be? And I think giant monsters is probably the limit of it. And, I love that. I love watching films to go to different worlds and to see, kind of outrageous scenarios. I've always been it's always appealed to me much more than movies about real life. When I watch a movie, I mean, I'm happy to watch anything good. But if the TV screen, if the cinema screen is a window into another world, I don't want to look through that window into just, this world. I want to see something crazy. I want to see something different. I want to see something that will just expand my mind or take it somewhere else. For me, I got into monsters via sort of sci-fi. So like Star Wars and Doctor Who and, but I just found it all so incredibly appealing. And horror and sci-fi, they're kind of genres of ideas that can, yeah, I mean, I think just nothing's more appealing. It's just, how can you possibly beat monsters? Growing up, was there anything better than a Ray Harryhausen movie? I didn't think so. For me, it was an event. And when they came out of the cinema, that made my year, really.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's the same with, like, I guess with a monster sort of pop up everywhere. I was really interested that you had Richard Kiel in the book as well, as like, because you don't think of a 007 and a James Bond movie as having monsters, but of course Jaws is exactly that. It's monstrous.
He is, isn't he? I mean, it's like, well, we thought we made a list of, because we knew that we wanted to split it up by monsters. And we wanted to include, just make it as wide a subject as possible. And we thought it would be crazy to not include humans. In most monster movies, humans are the villains. I mean, in Creature from the Black Lagoon, it's the humans that go hunting for this creature and want to put it in a museum that are the villains, really. In Frankenstein, it's Dr. Frankenstein. It's not the poor sad dumb bastard he builds. It's the human. It's the villagers with the pitchforks and the torches. I mean, humans, even in monster movies, are invariably the villains. And so I think henchmen are Nazis. I mean, how can you get more monstrous than a Nazi? Honestly, they're certainly not sympathetic.
And when you're talking about how you broke down the book, so there's different chapters on each type of monster, with suitable puns being used to
Yes.
some of the chapters.
Well, as our tribute to famous monsters, it just felt appropriate.
Yeah, absolutely. I tell you, someone else who does loads of wonderful puns is probably one of my favorite punsters is Michael Giacchino in his soundtracks.
Yes,
Yeah,
every
much.
single one of his tracks is, he's a master at it.
Yeah, he is. Early on when I started to, when I just was, discovered when I discovered Michael, his music, I was like, these are really hilarious track names, and I asked him and he's like, yeah, I just liked it. I don't take it seriously. Just kind of fun. I think Star Trek, the J.J. Abrams Star Trek was the first time I was like really looking at what the track names were. And I'm like, this is crazy shit. So, but he's a super cool guy. And that's the other thing too, like getting somebody like Michael, who is a massive, massive genre fan. I mean, the guy grew up dreaming of being a filmmaker and sci-fi, fantasy, horror. And Michael is obviously an extremely prolific composer. And it's interesting talking to composers, like we had Charles Bernstein and so many other composers and so forth. But talking to all these composers and Charles Fox, they now, because I say, so who do you think is the new John Williams? And everybody goes to Michael. All these iconic composers like Michael Giacchino is the new John Williams. And it's true. If you listen to like the best of Michael Giacchino, it's like one thing after another. And you're like, geez, Michael, he composed that, And now he's a director, So that's the other thing too. It's like when Marvel came to him and said, we want you to direct a movie. What do you want to do? Like Iron Man, this. He's like, no, I want to do Werewolf by Night because he loves monsters. And I think to me, even though I'm a little biased because I worked on it, I think that's the best Marvel movie. It's 48 minutes and it's super fun and it just gets to the point and it's just one cool thing after another. So, it's cool. But no, I think the pun thing, Marshall is really instrumental in that. That all stems from being a father. So a lot of those I think are like father jokes and puns because we're both corny buggers. And
I can't resist a pun, nor do I try. Although I mean, these are the jokes that I've been making since I was younger, but now they call them dad jokes. I don't know. I mean, they never
we've been saying it forever.
Dad jokes when I was 20, but now suddenly they're dad jokes. It's
we were saying all this before we were dads,
Yeah, Alfred Hitchcock said the pun is the highest form of literature.
I don't disagree.
when you hit on a good pun, it's like when it's just there's nothing better. You can do rubbishy puns. It's like when people say sarcasm is the lowest form of wit. It's not if it's done properly,
No, I use that as a tool every day. on set. It's sarcasm. It's the only way to really get your point across without making somebody really cry. So,
but we spent a good couple of days coming up with puns. It was like if this is a sort of famous monsters sort of esque project, it's like we can't not have our titles being puns. And actually, a lot of people have talked about it and kind of commented on it. So that's very gratifying. You know, when you have a crazy idea and it works out, people like it, people get a kick out of it. You know, it's like. And it's spreading dad jokes out into the world, isn't it? What could be better than that? Monsters and dad jokes.
So to go back to the way you've sort of defined the monsters and you've categorized them and you've broken them up, did you have like, is there a sort of definition that you think includes all those monsters? Is there some sort of key things that a monster has to have to make it a monster?
That's a good question.
That's a good question. That's a very good question. I mean, I think
you can't say they're all evil or the bad guys. So
I don't think so at all. I think, I mean, whenever I think of monsters, I think, my mind goes to Creature from the Black Lagoon and Godzilla and, and they're really kind of victims of circumstance, So I think the thing is that people that love monsters are kind of the oddballs anyhow. It's kind of the odd men and women out. And, as I was growing up, and I was obsessed with monsters, I definitely was like the weird kid, And then as I got into the film industry and met people that are like-minded, same thing. So I think it has to do with like being on the island of misfit toys, essentially. And you're just kind of the odd person out. And I feel that's what monsters are. I never, ever looked at monsters as being the villain or the bad thing or something, that I should be really scared of. I was way more fascinated. So I think to me, it's all about fascination and just the wonder of it all, be it King Kong, which is, I think, incredible. And like we said, Ray Harryhausen and all the Universal monsters and then so on and so forth. But I think we all feel that way. Like we love the monsters. They're our friends. They're our friends, And
maybe it's people that kill things. Maybe it's things and people who kill people, sometimes for good reasons, usually for bad reasons. Maybe it's just something they threaten our mortality, maybe. I don't know, because it's like you could say that Tocht, the head Nazi from Raiders of the Lost Ark, is a monster. You could say that Stripe from Gremlins is a monster, that Larry Talbot, the Wolfman, Godzilla. I mean, you'd be hard-pressed to find qualities that they all share other than they threaten life.
Yeah, because I was sort of thinking about this as I was reading through your book, and I was thinking, is it something to do with size? Is it like things that are too big? Like the Jaws is not just about a shark; it's about a very big shark,
Yes.
And then I thought, King Kong is a good example. It's not just a gorilla; it's a massive gorilla. And then I thought, well, Gremlins are titchy, and there are too many of them, I guess. But yeah, that idea of mortality sort of comes through in quite a few of the monsters. The idea they turn up, and I think Simon Pegg refers to zombies as kind of walking death, as they're just they're our fear of mortality walking. That danger is definitely endemic as the sort of the thriller aspect, the horror aspect of the monster movies. What about so you're approaching this question's for Howard, I guess, is you're approaching this as a professional makeup artist who's working on all these films. Is there a sense where your professional judgment, the fact that you've got relationships with people and you can't, does that hold you back a little bit from sort of criticizing some of the monsters that you?
Oh no, not at all. I mean, I think we all kind of feel the same way. Like, we'll look at something that might be cheesy, like let's say some of the creatures from Paul Blaisdell's films, like It Conquered the Earth and so forth. Those are cheesy looking monsters, but they're endearing. We all loved them as a kid, And I mean, I think the thing is that we have mutual respect for everything. And this book it's a very positive book. Like, we weren't looking for like, let's get, these stories or those stories. And, it's not that sort of thing. And I think because I have such close ties to so many people, a lot of the people that are in the book are just personal friends. And it was just the way Marshall and I handled it they were just comfortable and very candid conversations. I mean, Marshall and I tailored questions specific to what we were writing about, but also to the individual. But one thing would lead to another and another and another. So, we could have a question like, what are your favorite monsters? And then, that would just grow into something else that was totally off the mark, but yet really amazing. And I think it's just like we would preference before the interviews, like, we're just at dinner, and we're just shooting shit and having having a steak and a bottle of wine and talking about shit that we love. So, that was really it, and making everybody feel comfortable. And listen, we're both very good conversationalists, Marshall and I, and people felt very confident. And we didn't have a lot of repeat people in this book, but the ones that we did already knew Marshall, which was great, and have a relationship with him, a friendship with him. So it was fun. I mean, we loved it. And the thing is, like with the first book, we took the opportunity to do it during the pandemic, so nobody was working. Right. And then the second book, we took the opportunity during the actors and writers strike because nobody was working. So I guess we have to wait for another like pandemic or strike to write another book someday. So, but
yeah, I got my fingers crossed for zombie apocalypse, because then we can make a really, really long book.
Yeah, there you go.
I think the great thing about doing this project with Howard, one of the many great things, was that we were speaking to his friends, and that it was like that. As journalists, when you interview somebody and you come in and they don't necessarily know you and it's just you, then people sort of have their guard up. And these days, it used to be back in the day that you could interview somebody for an hour or two. Nowadays, it's like, okay, you've got 10 minutes, and it's like, you can't, there's no chit chat. You can't work your way into something. It's just, there's no chance to get, to get them relaxed, to get to the stories that maybe you weren't expecting, to get conversational. But with us, with our chats, we would do them for anything from an hour to 2 hours, sometimes more. And a lot of the stuff wasn't really necessarily for the book, but a lot of things from the book spun off from those conversations with people being relaxed. And then they would go, oh, yeah, I remember this. And it wouldn't, we would give people an idea about what we wanted to talk about first. But I think a lot of the best stories in the book came about from just things that they just sort of remembered from while we were chatting. And we told them that they would have a chance to read all their quotes. So nobody felt that they had to be guarded. And everybody trusts Howard, So it wasn't like it was just a journalist coming and talking to them. It was like the both of us. And they knew that Howard wasn't going to stitch them up. I think nowadays a lot of people are very sort of cautious, and they have walls up because they don't know how they're going to be represented. But between the relaxed vibe of it, the friendliness, the chattiness, and the fact that we sent everybody their quotes and gave them a chance to, if they wanted to fix or change something, if they wanted to, cut something entirely, that they knew that it wasn't like as soon as it escaped their lips that was it. They were, and so honestly, we could get another book out of the stuff that we didn't use, but everybody was very kind and forthcoming, and it worked out well. But I think it's this is not a book that like a journalist could do alone. It just couldn't happen.
Right.
I think that the fact that we came out from a place of relationships made all the difference, which is why it's chatty, which is why it sounds like you're just hanging out with these people and they're giving you honest, candid stories. And that's what we wanted. We wanted people to come away from the book feeling like they'd really had an insight. They really got a sense of what it was like. We weren't looking to write an exhaustive history. We just wanted people to read the book, and at the end of it, just have a general sense of, oh, okay, so, that's how it's done. And that's the sort of life of a filmmaker. And we wanted it to be more personal and more conversational. And I think we achieved it. People seem to like it.
I think you did. I think you did. Absolutely. I love the fact that you have people talking as well about sort of like the process of trial and error in terms of how they, we kind of wanted this and that didn't work. Maybe going back to the drawing board 2 or 3 times, and even quite a few people saying we didn't really get what we wanted. If we'd been given a bit more time, or if they'd been, given us a bit more money, we could have done it much better. I remember one of the ones that really struck me was like the Gremlins and Gremlins 2. That in Gremlins, they were just basically making one gremlin and a little bit of variation. And the second Gremlin, they had the opportunity to actually really redesign the whole thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that also stemmed from Rick Baker wanting to not do something that's been done before. So he
Right.
and Joe Dante kind of came like, let's just make this, laboratory of gremlin experiments. So because as a makeup effects artist, you obviously you have to do what you're hired to do, but you also want to have fun. And you want to like make it interesting for yourself. Like I'm on a show right now. I'm shooting in New Mexico in Albuquerque, and there's a couple things that are written that are really cool. But the producers originally said like, we want to temper that down. Don't take it. And I'm like, I can't do that. So I'm just going to do whatever I want because I have to have fun. I got a big makeup coming up this week, and I'm like, yeah, it's not what they want, but that's okay. Once they see it, they're going to be like, "Oh my God, we're so glad you did that because it's super cool." Even if they don't show it, I'm good. At least I know I did something fun. But I mean, I think for all of us that are creative, of course, we don't want to just do the norm and like, okay, yeah, right, thank you for the paycheck, and here it is. Everybody's super invested in everything they do. And listen, we don't know what's going to end up. We don't ever know if a film's going to be good or bad. We hope it's going to be great. Sometimes, you'll have films that are so much fun to work on and they're so hard to watch afterwards. And then there's the reverse. You work on films and you're like, this is going to be the worst piece of crap ever. And it turns out really, really good. So, everybody has those. I'm sure, you hear all these stories like, let's take the Howling, which was like, had no money, no time, poor Joe Dante. And they didn't even have werewolves, I mean, it was a werewolf movie, but they couldn't afford it until, Joe shot the movie and had hope and like, we're going to get werewolves in here at some point. And then got Rob Bottin to, do some additional stuff during like post, which made the movie incredible. It's like one of my all-time favorite horror movies. So it's always interesting to see how things develop,
So you get the script and you're sort of leafing through it at the very beginning and just looking for where are the bits that I can really go to.
Yeah, I mean, it's like when you get it, with all of us, we read a script and get the flavor of it, and like, okay, cool. And you basically break it down and you're like, okay, well, there's this is neat. And you go to the table with great ideas. Sometimes they stick to the wall and sometimes they don't. And that's okay, because that's what the collaboration is. I might have very different ideas than the director does, and then we'll do it the way the director wants, and it might be better. You're like, oh yeah, I really didn't see it that way. So I mean, I think we all are that way, and that comes across. I feel like everybody talking about things in the book, like Phil Tippett talking about working on Star Wars, or Rick Baker, talking about that, or talking about working on King Kong. You have great. You have high expectations, and sometimes it works, and then sometimes your expectations are so low. There's like a story Rob Bottin told when he was working for Rick Baker on Star Wars, and he's like, this is going to be junk. And some guy came over and sat next to him, and it's like, so what do you think? He's like, I don't get this movie. It's like, there's aliens in a bar, and I don't know. It turned out he was sitting next to George Lucas, telling George Lucas he wasn't quite sure what the hell they were making. So, again, who knows? And listen, regarding Star Wars, which of course is a huge influence to both Marshall and myself. I mean, it's my all-time fave and inspiration. That I can't imagine like what it was like for Lucas to try to sell this movie and make it, and it just wasn't happening, because that back then that's when they would all get together, like De Palma and Scorsese and Spielberg and Coppola, and watch and criticize, and it's like, man, you must be like you respect what your friends are saying, but you're also kind of gutted. Like they're, De Palma telling you like, I don't know what the hell's going on. You need to have something explain what the hell we're watching in the beginning of the movie, So yeah, it's always interesting. And I think it's super important for collaboration. When I'm working and I have my crew, I don't know all the answers. So I always ask like, hey guys, what do you think about this? Or what do you you see this a little bit differently? Ultimately it's my decision. And I'll take the success or the failure, but it's great to always have collaboration, which is what filmmaking is about, So, same as this book, same as Marshall and I would ping pong nonstop every single morning at 4 a.m. because I was in LA and Marshall's in the UK. And once we started to get, started writing it in pages and all that, it's every morning we would be on there going through like, what can we use? What can we work? So, I mean, luckily Marshall is a super wordsmith and great at all this. And he really, really put all that together, and it just flows. In both books, it flows so well. And yeah, it's great. I mean, it's a great partnership that Marshall and I have. And that's why both these books are, one, we're very happy with. Listen, if it was crap, we'd go, don't buy this book. It's crap. But they're really good books, man. They're really good books, and they're super fun, and they're easy to read, which is also part of our intention. I know I've said this before.
And they look beautiful. They look beautiful. Yeah. The pictures are gorgeous.
We were very, very, Marshall and I were really, really, we bullied the publishing company well back. And
we did.
And our poor editor, Ross Hamilton, because there were specifics. It could not look like, so many books come out now that are self-published, and God love them, but they are so low quality. They look like
they're printed on toilet paper.
Yeah,
no offense to those books, but they're not.
No, but it's unfortunate because so much effort is put into it, but they didn't get a publishing deal, and they're I'll just put it out on Amazon, whatever, publishing.
Print on demand. It just looks
and we were like, we're not doing that. We want this quality. We want this quality. We were real specific about everything, and then also because most of us, including myself, have dyslexia and learning disabilities and reading disabilities. It was very important for us to make sure the book was easy to read. Like, I don't like books that are crammed with like this little print. You can't follow it if you have a learning disability. So we made sure it was a very specific font in the way it was spaced out. And there's a lot of visuals intermixed, opposed to like pages, and then, 3 pages of photos and then, text. Mm-hmm. That's just unpleasant to read. So we were really trying to make a book that everybody could look at. I mean, I hear, children are looking through the books, and like they love it. They love the visual aspect of it. And, I think another thing about the book is that, about both books, it takes the fear away from children. Children, when you take the horror out of the context, that really makes a difference. It's something my wife said last night. My wife, Miriam, we were talking about it. And she's like, when you take it out of the context, it's not scary anymore. It's fascinating. And I'm like, 100%. So that was also it, like, take it out. And I mean, I have small children that are looking at the book, and they love it. They love it because of the visual aspect of it, and just seeing all these cool photos. So yeah, we're just
kids love horror. Kids love monsters. When I was a kid, I didn't start reading superhero comics till I was in my 20s. When I was growing up, I only read horror comics. I was just completely fascinated by it. I used to read all the DC horror comics and the Charlton horror comics, and all the creepy and eerie and anything British, Scream, anything that would come out that had monsters in it. I think it's just incredibly appealing. People think, oh no, you got to protect the kids from it. It's like, no, screw that. It's like, as adults, we get frightened. Kids are like, bring it on, They're like, they love it, except for the few that have obviously lifetime psychological problems from it. But it's, you can't make an omelet without breaking a few eggs,
That's true.
That's a price worth paying.
Yeah, I think so.
I think there's one of the other things that I got from reading the book, and this is partly to do with how you sort of break it down and everything, is the sort of like, there are trends that go through monsters. There are sometimes, like a few years ago, there was this huge zombie apocalypse moment where everything was zombies, from 28 Days Later to the Day of the Dead remake, and the Walking Dead, obviously, that you worked on, Howard. And it seems to maybe coming back, because we've got 28 years later. It's just out this year, and another two or three films to follow, I think. Frankenstein has just come out, Frankenstein is probably one of those which is the least used, I feel, of those big monsters. Dracula, there seems to be one every 25 minutes, but Frankenstein is more like, there's a couple of decades between this and Kenneth Branagh.
I think of Frankenstein more like a zombie. It's more like a sort of educated zombie sort of story, in a way, bringing the dead back to life.
Oh, that's interesting, yeah.
If I had to put them in a category, And I think that, zombie in the 70s and the 80s, there were very, very few zombie films, and it felt like a very underserved genre. But when something came around, it was always very exciting. I think the market is pretty saturated with zombies, and the people are looking for something else. I think at the moment, if you look at the monster movies coming out and being made, I think we're up for a phase of werewolves next. I think there's going to be there haven't been any great werewolf classics recently, but I have started noticing a lot more werewolf movies.
Right. Well, like Robert Eggers is doing a werewolf.
Yeah.
So,
there's kind of lots of that stuff, and you got there's just I think that there'll always be a kind of a monster in vogue, definitely. And
absolutely, and it's cyclic. You'll see it. It's like, you're right. There's a Dracula phase, and then there's a, creature phase, and then there's a zombie phase, and it just kind of goes around in circles. But,
what you never get is we almost never get as Creature from the Black Lagoon phase,
which that's
Howard's favorite monster, and it's like
I don't want to see a remake. Yeah, that's okay. Leave it alone. Just re-release it. Re-release the Universal movie. I'm good with that. I'm so fearful of a remake of that film. I can't tell you, but it's so great. But I think that's a possible thing.
What did you think of the sort of, they started off doing that sort of dark universe idea with, there was going to be a Russell Crowe, Jekyll and Hyde, and there was I think there was a Johnny Depp movie. And the only one that got made was the Tom Cruise Mummy.
Yeah, I think it was very misguided. It was really disappointing. They had a magnificent... it even goes back farther with Stephen Sommers' Mummy, the Mummy movies, which I'm not a fan of. But, and then Van Helsing, which could have been incredible. It really, oh boy, talk about missing the mark, sadly. And great stuff, creature-wise from Greg Canham and his crew. But yeah, total... really strange. It's like, here's your greatest, IP, and you screw it up over and over again. I don't know. Just tell the simple story. It's kind of the same way I feel about American Godzilla films. I think they're dreadful. And the greatest Godzilla movie, Godzilla -1, that Takashi did, and who's in the book as well. And that movie is fantastic because it's a beautiful story. And it just happens to have Godzilla in it. They're missing the mark. They don't get it. It's like, just tell the story. It doesn't need to be that complicated about this, this, and this, and this. It's a giant monster. All right, there you go. So
the Dark Universe movies were more like adventure films, weren't they? They weren't scary, and it's like, it's just The Mummy was a Tom Cruise movie, which there's nothing intrinsically wrong with that. I love a good Tom Cruise movie if it's like Mission Impossible or Maverick, but it's like put him in The Mummy, and it's like it's not going to be about the mummy anymore, and I want it to sort of be about the mummy. For me, people think about that incredible makeup of Boris Karloff in all the wrappings, and that's literally just at the very beginning of The Mummy. It's like he was in that makeup one day. And it's so powerful that 100 years later, it's still what we think of as almost 100 years later. It's still how we think of it as that's what the mummy is, and that's what the mummy looks like. And mainly,
that's very similar.
He's the with the dry skin. And
Ardith Bay. Yeah, when he's
Ardith Bay. That makeup is also amazing, but it's so mysterious and foreboding, and it's a proper monster movie. It's not Indiana Jones with mummies.
That's similar to Silence of the Lambs. Anthony Hopkins is in that film for 10-15 minutes, and he wins an Oscar because he just burns through that whole film as an amazing monster. I rewatched that recently, and I thought Ted Levin's character, Buffalo Bill, is actually terrifying as well. I think that he gets underrated because Hopkins is so good, but Levine is just amazing.
It's a great movie. That's a great movie. So love it.
And Howard's right. It's like people say, it's a crime thriller. It's like, it's a crime thriller about a guy who keeps a storage cabinet full of, pickled heads and stuff. It's like a guy dancing around with, a suit that he's making of human skin. It's like, so tell me how that isn't a horror film.
Exactly.
He has a dungeon.
Yeah, it literally, the whole finale takes place in the dark. That's a horror movie. If that's not a horror movie, I don't know what a horror movie is.
Right. But I think now Hollywood realizes there's great profit. Obviously, there's always been profit in horror. And thrillers and all that. And now it's like you see a lot of the stuff with like Weapons coming out, which I don't know if I classify that as a horror movie, but is being classified as a horror film and doing very well. And it's one film after another. With the
horror's the only genre that you don't need stars as well.
You don't need stars in horror. You're not going to see the movie because so and so's in it or what have you.
So they can be made cheaper and they can make more money, and that's why everybody starts in horror films. You're an interesting filmmaker. They say, okay, we'll give you a horror movie to prove yourself. So many actors start off in horror films. You look at horror films from 10, 15 years ago, and you're going to see all the people who are the biggest stars right now. It's just like seems to be how everybody starts. Like you get murdered a few times and then you're hit the big time.
Right.
Kevin Bacon gets very irritated that that's the one photograph that everyone gives him to sign is the Friday the 13th
because it's iconic. But I worked with Kevin Bacon a while ago, and we talked about it because we have Tom Savini obviously, and he had only positive and great things to say. It's fun. Yeah. Or, you look at Leonardo DiCaprio in Critters 2, or Critters 2 or 3, one of those Critters.
I think he was in the second one, yeah.
In the second one, yeah, McGarris did. And Jennifer Aniston, they was in Leprechaun, and Matthew McConaughey was like in a Texas Chainsaw film with Renee Zellweger before.
Steve McQueen, he was when he started off in The Blob. Clint Eastwood was Revenge of the Creature. He has one scene, and Lee Van Cleef. All of them start in horror films.
Yeah.
Why the hell
Johnny
not?
Depp being eaten by a bed?
Yeah, I mean, it's Johnny Depp being eaten by a bed. There you go. So, but it's they're very memorable things, and you also have to regarding Nightmare on Elm Street with Wes Craven. He had a good eye for casting. Always did, and that was talk about. I mean, Johnny Depp didn't become popular for a while, but still you look back and you're like, holy shit, that's Johnny Depp in that movie. Wes was always really good about that. Same with Scream. He has really good people in that film, that really helped elevate the script tremendously. So, so you never know.
I'm also interested in, some of these monsters are obviously being created from novels, Frankenstein, Dracula, from myth, from nature, big shark, big monkey. But there's also the slasher movies, and we talk about Nightmare on Elm Street. Freddy is a really good example, or Michael Myers is a really good example of someone sitting down and going, okay, I need someone who's a killer and is memorable and is interesting, and they sort of have to build up someone. Most recently, Art the Clown with the Terrifier films. That process of building up a monster like that, I mean, you must have been involved in some of those processes, Howard. How does that, what are you looking for? What is that magic dust which turns something...
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'll give an example. So when we got the script for Scream, we couldn't figure out what the hell the killer looked like. I mean, we did design after design, and they never hit. It never hit. And Wes just kept going that's not it. I don't know what it is, but that's not it. And it ended up being just happenstance that Wes was doing a location scout for the film in San Jose where we shot it. And he was reviewing the photographs, and there just happened to be, he had shot a photo looking out through a window, and on the wall was this mask, which was that Scream mask. And he was like, that's it. So that just kind of happened, and then we at K&B made a series of different ones because everybody had their own opinion of what it should be as far as the filmmakers go. So there's probably 4 or 5 different looks in Scream 1. If you kind of pin it through, Bob Kurtzman sculpted a whole bunch of different masks, and because the Weinsteins had an idea, and Wes had an idea, and then this guy had an idea. And anyhow, there's a bunch of different masks. But at the end, ended up being, they got the rights to use that mask for all the other movies, so they didn't have to make any of them. They just got him, and obviously it's become like one of the number one things. I think, you referenced Art the Clown, and Damien Leone, who's in this book, and we really, really wanted to put him in here because he's becoming the face of horror, which is really great. He's a super, super good guy. And I love the fact that, he did everything literally. Is like, he's the makeup artist, the director, the writer, the editor, the composer, And Damien does everything. He's so multi-talented.
And he funded it by, delivering pizzas when he first started.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, literally he was his own producer and moneymaker and everything.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible. But, he was able to come up with a character. And I'm sure in his mind, he was like, I'm going to do the next Jason or the next... That's not how it works. You're just like, we got to find something that fits within the context. And then it picks up. I mean, this year at Halloween Horror Nights at Universal Studios, it's a giant Terrifier maze, and they've been pushing it. And, that's got to be huge for Damien, I'm excited to see what he does next. Like outside of the Terrifier, it's like, I feel like he'll move on to do some other stuff, which will be cool and reinvent a whole nother genre perhaps, or add to our genre because he's such a horror fanatic, which is great. But yeah, to answer your question, I don't think we start off ever like we got to find something that's iconic. For me, when you're designing things, it's about the silhouette, and what you can come up with. And if you showed silhouettes of Michael Myers, you're like, that's Michael Myers. If you show a silhouette of Jason, that's Jason. Freddy, it's about coming up with an interesting graphic. And that's really what it is. Like if you could draw it without any detail, what's interesting about that? The alien, Giger's alien, that's like one of the most iconic designs for a creature ever. Like, I mean, who came up with that? H.R. Giger, because it's not in the script. Like, and then the alien looks like this and this. That's all Giger's ideas, and working with Ridley Scott, which was brilliant of Ridley Scott to like go, hey, let's not get a monster maker. Let's get this Swiss surrealist artist to come up with something really, really cool, which they did. But to me, we always look at it, and Greg Nicotero, who I own K&B with, that's always what we're thinking, like, what is this going to look like in silhouette, like looking at it, what's going to be cool, for its profile. And that's part of it. You also think about, because when I was a kid, I used to just draw stuff all the time on my homework or lunch bag or whatever, what a kid could draw. It's something Richard Taylor had said to me when they were designing King Kong for the Peter Jackson King Kong. He's like, I want to come up with something that a kid could just draw on his lunch bag. Like, that's Kong, and that was part of the design process for Richard, to kind of come up with a cool design for Kong for Peter Jackson.
I think that silhouette
always says that everybody says. Howard always says that everybody always asks for Alien and Jaws, but different, right? That's,
Yeah, that's always like the gag. Like, what we wanted something that's like Alien, Jaws, but different. So, John, what were you saying?
I was just following up on what you were saying about the silhouette, and I was thinking of this. There's a scene in Jurassic Park where the silhouette of the dinosaur sort of comes and matches one of the merchandise sort of posters. So it's just apropos what you said. I mean, in terms of I want Alien, I want Jason, but better.
Oh yeah, that happens all the time. Yeah, that happens all the time.
Having said that, you've already mentioned, Howard, your sort of one of your favorite monsters, the creature from the Black Lagoon. What other ones would you sort of point to as being your favorites, and why? What would you stipulate? That's why I love that particular monster.
Well, I love Godzilla. I just think Godzilla is cool. I love his size. I just love this giant reptile thing. Something about Godzilla I really, really love. I love those big giant monsters. I like stuff that has a lot of texture to it. I mean, I love the Frankenstein monster. I love.
Have you seen the new Guillermo del Toro film?
I have not seen it. It's not here in the States yet.
Right. And I saw it in Venice at the festival.
Oh, I'm super excited to see it. I made sure I saw Guillermo in July, and I said, I'm really excited to see it. He's like, oh, do you want to see the monster? I'm like, no, I do not want to see the monster. Let me see it in the context. Please don't show me anything from the movie. And I'm sure it's going to be great. So I'm very excited to see it. I love Guillermo. I love Guillermo's movies. I think he's talk about a guy who loves the genre.
Exactly.
So I'm very excited to see what Mike Hill, who created the makeup for that show, what he comes up with. So I'm excited to see it. But yeah, no, I love everything. As a kid, I was pretending I was Dracula. I pretended I was King Kong. I was Godzilla. I was Creature in the Black Lagoon. I just was obsession. And then with the Aurora monster models, my parents would buy me those from time to time, and it was just inundated. And I was lucky to have parents who encouraged my love for that and stomping around or wearing a vampire cape through the neighborhood at like 5 years old and stuff like that. I mean, Marshall has some, his mother was very encouraging to him as well, like really, even down to paintings for Marshall to have in his room of things he loved, which I think that's pretty spectacular. Like your mother realizes how much it means to you and is willing to like do a piece of artwork for you that you can hang in your room.
Oh yeah, my mum was a huge movie nerd before there was even that sort of phrase existed, and so she trained me up from the year dot. But I mean, she liked everything.
Same question, Marshall. Same question. What's your favorite sort of monsters, and why? What appeals to you about them?
Well, I mean, the first monster that I probably fell in love with was King Kong, and I love King Kong because I think he's a wonderful character, completely screwed over by humans, completely innocent. He did not ask. He was very happy living in the jungle, having the occasional sacrifice, fighting dinosaurs. And he was absolutely, the king of the jungle and having a lovely time. Then this blonde comes in the jungle, confuses him. He's not sure what's going on. Then they gas him. And, don't get me started about, I mean, they were going to film him, right? And then somehow they found the room in the hold of this little ship to contain him for the months it must have took to get back. But that's a whole other thing. I love the mystery of King Kong. For me, it's not just about the monster. It's about the world that it's in. And I find no world more appealing than the world of King Kong. Everything, the long ocean voyages, the fog, the mystery, the local natives. I mean, it's got dinosaur fights. It's like it's got everything. And then they put him in New York, and of course he's going to go mad. Everybody went crazy in New York the first time. So
right.
It's like, it's not really his fault. He's curious. All these things trundling towards him, they look like boxes of candy. Of course he's going to pull the train off and see, try and get the last treat out. It makes sense. So I love King Kong, definitely King Kong. I'm a big apologist. I stand up for King Kong. I don't think he's guilty of anything. I think
he's a typical tourist. He goes straight to the
exactly. He wants to go to all the sites. He wants to see everything. He wants to try all the new food. It's just the new food is just like a bunch of screaming white people, but that's fair enough. It's like I've not tried that before. It's like eat those. So for me, I think King Kong, definitely, and coming from a sort of sci-fi fan, all the creatures in Star Wars just absolutely kind of fascinated me. The cantina sequence, oh my God, so completely mind-blowing. It's like I said, it's the other, and you don't get more other than that. And Star Trek. Yeah, I even like, the Doctor Who creatures, even though they look like three cardboard boxes glued together. It's like, oh my God, it's a lunchbox coming to kill me. But somehow, they played it straight. They believed it in the show, so I believed it.
They sell it.
Yeah. But I also like really stupid monster movies. I like Night of the Lepus. It's like, I'm totally here for giant bunnies or the ants of Lakeside Manor. It's like, because a monster doesn't have to be just like, one ant is not a monster, but a billion ants is a monster. I mean, then it's a monster movie, and it's, so anything like that. The Swarm. Really, anything where people are just being terrorized by stuff, I kind of dig it, really.
I went to see Star Wars when it first came out of the cinema. It didn't get to the UK until it didn't get to the north of England until 78.
Yeah.
And I remember being terrified of Darth Vader. I remember Darth Vader for me is like the monster of just the fact that he could pick somebody up, and that to a child's mind was like, how can you pick someone up by their throat and strangle them like that?
And he could choke you across the room.
Yeah, that to me that was less frightening than the picking someone up and throwing them against the wall. That was like much more. I don't know. That just seemed much more real. Phil Tippett, as well, you had mentioned earlier. I interviewed him for his film Mad God that he did a few years ago in Locarno. He premiered it, and now there's a genius in the world of makeup effects and special effects and visual effects.
Yeah, how lucky we were to interview him. I just, I think one of the great things about Monster Kids, Makeup Monster filmmakers, is that they're the least jaded members of the film community that I know. It's like everybody that we spoke to, virtually everybody, is still so excited about monsters and creatures and what their friends are doing and what they're doing. And I just kind of love that enthusiasm. And I mean, Phil Tippett is like, he keeps at it. He's always like pushing himself and doing these crazy things and that take forever. And it's like, you just gotta love him. We were interviewing him, and it was like, I just had to pinch myself. Not like and this was after we did like 70 interviews for the first book, 80 for this one. So it's like, a lot of people might think, okay, it's, interview 124, let's just do it. But it's like, you have to say, this is the guy who did, Holochess in Star Wars. This is the guy that did the AT-ATs in Empire. This is, it's like, I'm just looking at him thinking that he made my childhood. There's so much of the things that I absolutely love and that changed me. It just sounds pretentious, but I mean, I feel like these movies like changed me on a genetic level. This is like, or at least they were kind of the thing that I saw. It was like, okay, this is who I am. This is what I love, and these are my people. And to actually include people like that in the book. I mean, I know it's a bit off topic, but I mean, we interviewed Joe Dante, for God's sake, Rick Baker. I mean, you can't. When I was growing up, Joe Dante, John Landis, these are the people that shaped my, my dreams and the things that I was obsessed with. So it was like to actually be able to create books where we're speaking directly to them and hearing about all their kind of reminiscences was kind of like mind-blowing, really.
Celebrating their work.
Yeah, really.
I know, by the way, just extra points for the posters as well, and the people who are designing the posters that you put in there. Just again, another part of the cinematic world which I adore, just extends beyond the films themselves.
We were lucky. Well, Graham, we interviewed for the first book, and it was like when we were making a list of people that we wanted to speak to for the second one, it's like we have to speak to Graham. It's like he designed the poster for the Evil Dead, and for a lot of people, especially pre-internet, the posters are our first taste of a monster, our first sense of the film and stuff. And they're the things that we stare at on the underground stations. They're the things on the bus stops when we're waiting. It's like those are the things we put on our bedroom walls. We spend a lot more time with those than we do the actual movies.
But I mean, sometimes there wouldn't even be trailers on television for a lot of these films, and so the only thing I saw of The Howling was the poster, and that was the only thing I saw before I went in to see the film at a very young age. Too young, it has to be said.
I'm not too young. It's all good.
But look what it's done to me. I'm one of the rare examples which have been mentally scarred. I know you have to go soon, Howard, so I'm going to give you the last question before we wrap up, and that is, you've got an opportunity to talk to all these people and talk about people who maybe you didn't get the opportunity to talk to because they're no longer with us. But who are your personal inspirations in terms of getting you into this work and also continuing, that excitement that drives you on? So it can be someone from the past, it can be somebody even contemporary, or it can be a mix.
Yeah. No, listen, the world of Universal monsters was a big, gigantic thing for me, and my father was he was a cinephile as well, and he really encouraged me more than anybody to do this, and not so much as a monster maker, but as just being in the industry. And he was in the industry as a sound engineer. But I think as far as filmic people go, cinematic people, John Chambers was a huge influence. Looking at the pages of Famous Monsters as a little kid and seeing this big guy running foam latex with a cigarette in his mouth that had 4 inches of ash hanging off of it. At that point, I'm like, I wonder if I do this, if I have to learn how to smoke, because I'd always see photos of all these guys smoking, in the makeup trailer or whatever. Like my buddy Eddie Enriquez had a pipe. He's doing Richard Basehart's makeup from, Island of Dr. Moreau with a pipe. And I'm like, they all seem to be smoking. Wow, it's crazy. That's funny how times have changed. Ray Harryhausen, massive. And Rick Baker, Rick Baker was like, I still idolize Rick Baker. I always will. I think the world of him. I think he's so magnificent on every level. But I'm really inspired by what people are doing today. I love my friends, see what my friends are doing. I find it really cool, and that keeps me going. I just like everything, I'm really inspired by what's going on today and seeing all these different things that people are doing. But it all goes back to, watching movies with my dad, with Vincent Price, or with, like Jack Arnold movies or anything. It's just all movies. But see, I'm not just a horror fanatic. I love horror. I love all movies. Like, I'm obsessed with all films. Like, one of my favorite filmmakers is Hal Ashby, who never made a horror movie. But I just love movies. Steven Spielberg. Jaws blew me away, and here we are 50 years later, still celebrating it. The movie re-released, made a ton of money. A film that's 50 years old, which proves something, which I think is pretty fantastic, and proves that if the movie is great, it will always be great and will make money. So I encourage studios actually to keep re-releasing films to the general public, not make them so boutique. And man, oh man, they're going to see some revenue, because people love to go back and see films they know are good, are great films, because we roll the dice nowadays. Every time we go to the movie theater, it can end up costing you, between $50 to $100. And that's a lot to ask when, you don't pay, it doesn't pay through. But, watching the classics and things like that, love it. But I'm inspired by all of it. I just think it's great. I love to see everything. And I love the new technology too. I'm not one of those guys who's stuck in the past, like we should go back to the good old days. There are certain aspects of that, sure, but I'm excited about what's moving forward and how technology is being utilized. And, but it's all about what's on the page. Ultimately, if it's not on the page, it ain't going to work, no matter what you do. The joke of like, we'll fix it in post. I was on real quick. I was on a Seth Rogen movie, and we were talking about the Green Hornet, and he's like, "Yeah, man, that's all they kept saying. Oh, that we'll fix that in post. That joke wasn't funny. We'll fix it in post." He's like, "That's not the right answer. Like, you got to figure it out. Make sure it works on paper." And it's true. If it's not on paper, there's no way it's going to work.
Marshall, similar question.
For me, Ray Harryhausen was a huge influence. He was the first filmmaker that I was aware of, as a small child. That's the first person that I kind of realized that did that. It didn't make it any less magical. The thought of one person beavering away in his home studio for months on one sequence. It's like, the dedication and the imagination, the fact that he made those creatures, the fact that he was fascinated with history and mythology, and that he used that to inspire him to make all these amazing creatures that introduced those worlds to us as kids and made them so thrilling. And I just couldn't get enough of it. So Ray Harryhausen was absolutely a god to me. When I started writing, I was 19 years. I was just turned 19, and Forbidden Planet was opening a new store, and he was doing some kind of promo work with them, and they asked me if I wanted to interview him. It's like, obviously, and I said, well, is that going to have to be a phone interview? And they go, oh no, he lives in he lives in town. And it's like, I had no idea. If I'd known that Ray Harryhausen lived in England, I would have been outside his house every day. Hey, Ray, adopt me, adopt me. But as it was, I went. I didn't want to leave. I mean, the guy was just absolutely just a God to me. Just absolutely adored him. So it was super important when we did the book, because with our last book, Masters of Makeup Effects, we could talk with all these great artists about how he inspired them. But it's not makeup effects. It wasn't appropriate for the last book. For this one, for Monsters, it was like it's completely appropriate. And actually, we decided that we wanted to give him a whole chapter just for Ray Harryhausen. It's the only filmmaker who gets his own chapter. But I don't think anybody would say, hey, it's not fair, because everybody loves Ray Harryhausen, and so his creatures, we spoke to so many filmmakers who said, who talked about their love for the Cyclops, and that moment with Talos turning his head in the Argonauts, and I mean, that specific 5-second moment, that's what inspired Chris Walas. So that moment, it's like, when he's doing it, the few days that he spent doing that movement, it's like, because of that, we got Gremlins, and we got everything else that Chris Walas says. We got The Fly, and it's like, one thing kind of comes from another. So for me, it was definitely Ray Harryhausen's. Just he's always been my hero, really.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's like the godfather of the book in some ways. It's sort of his influence goes or stretches its tentacles, to use.
Oh, very much so. And he was a huge monster kid. He saw King Kong when he was small. So the movie that he loved most of all when he was small was the movie that I loved most of all when I was small. It's like I mean, I just felt like I got him, and I kind of related to him. I understood. I mean, I could never do what he did, but I've tried to have everybody has a little go at trying to do stop motion at some point or another, and the patience that you have to have. I mean, it's like it's supernatural, the things that he did, and the fact that he managed to actually give them characters and ticks and personalities. I mean, it's like nobody's like him. No. I mean, if there's anybody like Ray's Phil Tippett.
Right. Yes. Yeah. Another.
I would say
mad god indeed.
Yeah. And Henry Selick. Like The Nightmare Before Christmas. I think that there are some people, but the thing is that Ray, he took Kong and he just created this whole, Ray Harryhausen cinematic universe, in a way, and Sinbad films and things. You just can't beat that. Can't beat it.
Amazing. Well, listen, guys, thank you so much for talking to me.
Sure.
Making Monsters, I will put a link in the show notes so people can click on that and find where it is sold, although I imagine it will be out everywhere by the time this drops. Thank you once again, Howard, and thank you, Marshall.
Sure. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you so much for having us on.
Yeah. Thanks, John.